Welcome to the Curious Builder Podcast. I'm Mark Williams, your host. I'm with Anthony Ginkala today, owner and operator of Alpine Hardwood Flooring. Welcome, Anthony.
Hey, thanks, Mark. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you came on. You're one of my favorite trade partners to work with, and you and your brother Adam are the owners of the company. Is that right?
That's correct.
And obviously I know what you do, but for those listening, to me, you guys are like, the Ferraris of wood floor installing. And I say that somewhat jokingly because you guys are amazing. You guys are incredibly fast, incredibly skilled, and I don't think people really appreciate how much a wood floor does to a home, both from design but also livability. And so I guess I'd like to talk a little bit about how you started your company and what led you into wood floor, and then we'll kind of go down the gambit of quality and kind of where you're at now in the industry.
Sure. Yeah, it's a unique field. There's a lot that's unknown behind the scenes, and at the end of the day, you're trying to provide a product to those that really don't know the process. All they see is the final product. It creates a lot of challenges. A lot of designers and architects and even builders, they design their homes, and a lot of their space is just around the floor. Ultimately, you walk on it, you treat it like a piece of artwork, but yet you do. There's a lot of area that it covers, and unfortunately for us, you really like hardwood floors, and that helps us and everybody else out a lot. Part of the enjoyment we move in. A lot of our guys like to work. They and then the turnaround is so quick. Like there's so much there to you see a bare space, and then hours later and days later, you all of a sudden have a final product that everybody seems to enjoy.
I think it's very visually satisfying. I think, a lot of times, we're building a home, let's say it takes a year or 14 months. And early on in the process, when you're framing, a client will come by and be like, oh man, you guys put on the second floor today. You put on the roof today. Like they think, man, at this rate, you're going to be done in about 3 weeks. So there's a lot of visual. I've often talked to my framers and asked them, like, why do they like framing homes? And one of the first things that they comment on is they like to see at the end of a week, they like to see, or even at the end of a day, I can see progress. Mm-hmm. So many jobs that exist in the world today, it's hard to see progress. Yep. And I think a home, not only is it so personal, someone lives in it, it's providing an essential need. It's a home that people live in, but a wood floor specifically, to your point, you guys just did an install for us on 3,000 square feet, and it's all plywood, and we'll maybe walk through in a minute of like just walking through like the grades of wood, the humidity, all the stuff that in your sleep, but just that the average listener wouldn't know. But going back to the visual effect that it has is like, within a few hours, it's like you're racking that floor out. You've got everything kind of laid out. And within a day or two, it's like that entire floor is now covered with, beautiful white oak, let's say in this example.
Yeah, I was going to say that. It's intensely gratifying. We have a lot of clients that come in and they're just shocked, more or less, like even in an evening. And it's like, you did this in a day. And it's not like it's a process where I'll explain to our guys, like it starts off, you can go really, really fast, and you just got to get better and better and better through the staining and the finishings and all the sanding process. We can go over that later, but a lot of it still, people are just immensely overjoyed, mm-hmm. especially when they find something that they like and some inspiration or some color, and you can actually come up and actually hit that spot for them.
Mm-hmm. I think you mentioned it before, you used the word art. I've never really thought of that before, but I just love wood in general. Mm-hmm. Growing up the son of a builder and just in general liking art, I think wood is a beautiful, beautiful thing that we get to work with. It's organic, it's renewable, but each piece is unique. And looking at your floors, looking at how they change. Mm-hmm. Sometimes a client will want it all to look the same. And I don't say anything because that's their goal. And I don't think you can really do that 100%. I like the variable nature of a wood floor. To me, that is the charm. It's the character. No mm-hmm. person is perfect. And I think partly what makes people attractive is the fact that they're unique. And when I say attractive, like why do you have friends? Like why do you have people that you gravitate toward? Is there unique little ticks that make them different? I think wood floor is it has character. We have character grade in wood, right? Maybe that's where it came from. It's like, hey, this wood's a character, let's throw it in there.
Well, and part of it, if you think of the building process, there's a lot of like walls or paint or enamels or a lot of spaces where it is just a color, right? Yeah. It's all one set. So there's only so many places where you can make that unique change, as you mentioned, or something that just breaks out, whether it's a hardwood floor on a piece of artwork or a space or a accent wall. There's only so many spaces and places that you can do it where it makes sense. And fortunately, hardwood flooring is one of them.
Yeah. Walk me through, how did you start your wood floor company? Like, why wood floor? What's the origin story behind you and your brother?
So, let's see. So
how long ago was it, for one thing?
Okay, so it was I went to college back in 03, mainly because I needed to learn how to focus and I wanted to start my own company. Really the only two end goals. My brother Adam, he was working for a hardwood floor company at that time. Worked for another company when the first one went under, and then I worked with him also at the same time. So I got out of college with the finance degree, after all said and done. Or, I guess the finance job offer, and I started out with it. I realized that it was just a little too corporate for me. The suit and tie business was not for me. My brother Adam had gotten in an accident, head-on collision. A teacher had a stroke. And unfortunately, one of the type of projects or the type of work he could do was flooring. So you can walk on a hardwood floor, right? It's a flat surface for the most part. He's always liked the trades. He's really good at flooring already. And so naturally I just thought that it might be a good fit for us to start our own company, and together we can both run with it.
Wow, I did not know that. So your brother got hit head on by another car.
Yeah, so he got hit head on by a teacher, and actually she died.
Oh my.
So, but he went in a coma, and then just passed out or whatever, and then so that happened, and then so he shattered his heel, and so like the two things he loves, well, flooring for one, and then he loves to play hockey. So fortunately, both of them support his accident and his shattered heel.
Interesting. Wow.
So yeah, like a hockey skate holds
sure.
the boot in place and everything, and then flooring, there's ways and different things that you can sand a floor and you're walking. You're not walking up in steep roofs or any pitches or anything like that.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. The only other person I knew who had a shattered heel was a roofer that fell off a roof and shattered his heel.
Okay, sure.
So,
yeah.
Falls and hitting cars, you shatter heel. No bueno. No bueno.
Yeah.
So you guys started your company. What year was that you guys started?
That was in 07.
And was it just the two of you? Like, walk me through
So,
because how many employees do you have now?
So there's about 30 of us.
That's a big company.
Yeah, I don't know. It could be bigger. It's big for flooring, I guess, or in that respect, it for surely is. There's a lot of father-son combinations out there.
Yep.
And a lot of old fathers and son combinations. So unfortunately, flooring is pretty aggressive on a body. We tell our guys that by the time they're age 30, that we want them managing somebody or something, because it's just not likely. We see people with broken bodies all over, and it's just a result of them doing something for so long, So we focus on that. So we start out, there's actually 3 of us. Another good childhood friend of ours, he was interested in going to school, going back to college, maybe 4 or 5 years into it. And then either that or going to start on his own, or so he was hemming and hawing, and we offered just to buy him out. So we bought him out to make the decision easier for him, and then him and I ran with it from there.
Yep.
We had a goal of running just one employee per year. At that time, we had maybe 8 or 9 employees, I believe. They all wanted to come with us. Felt like that was just the best fit for them. So we ran with it. So I guess it's been as well as maybe 10 years, maybe 8 to 10 years that we started running, and then I guess it just kind of keep blossoming from there, I suppose.
Where did early on, because you guys are out in Cokato mostly, most of the families, and one thing we'll touch on later is just like the family structure is pretty unique. But where did your work come from originally? Because right now I think we've talked roughly between direct, let's say builders or people that are speccing you to do their work versus like retail, a homeowner saying, hey, we'd like Alpine Hardwood to come out and do our floor. Where are you at in today's world? 50-50, 60-40?
So right now it's almost exactly, and it's been like this for about 2.5 years. It's almost exactly 50% homeowners.
Yep.
And then the other would be architect, designers, builders.
And is that a good ratio for you, or would you like to see one more than another? I know some of it's market driven, right? It's it's not like you can control it.
The builders are always more they're always more involved, and they're always more knowledgeable. So there's less time explaining your processes, right?
Yep. Because I would imagine most of them are repeat clients as
yeah,
well.
yeah, they're all repeat. They're familiar with the process. They're a part of a construction, whole deal altogether. Yes, homeowners are great. It requires more effort, more time on the front end.
And most of those, I would imagine, of the 50% that you do for clients directly, how many of those are just sand and recoats versus, let's say, new floors?
Yeah. So it's still it's definitely market driven.
Yep.
I mean, right now there's a lot of installations going on. Most homeowners, it's usually an installation of a room.
Okay.
Right, of a living space, let's say.
Yep.
But resand the rest.
I see.
So we see a lot of that.
Yeah. So you have carpet in a great room, and you already had kitchen, it was wood floor, and your sunroom and dining room were already wood floor. So like, hey, we want to put in white oak in the great room, so we're going to take out the carpet. You'll lace in the for those listening, lacing in. Well, you can describe lacing.
Yeah, you
in.
just kind of interlace or finger into the existing floor.
Yep.
So it looks
and then
seamless.
you'll sand and recoat everything, so it looks like it's always been there.
Yep. Correct.
Yep.
So that's almost 100% of the homeowner, I guess, base, and then the builders. Yeah, it just depends on the market.
Yep.
A lot of referrals would come, and they're kind of the same situation, or a lot of installations too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and of course, there's always the challenges of what's in, what's not, what's budget, what's not. There's just all those things that, like hardwood flooring can be inexpensive if you compare it to stones and stuff like that, but not so inexpensive to maybe some carpets and so there's a lot of challenges that arise with that.
I like wood floor for a variety of reasons, but I mean, I think, well, A, it's beautiful. We already touched base about, and I'm biased because I just love wood. But I also think, especially for the homes that we do, we do maybe 3 to 4 high-end homes a year and a handful of remodels. I think at the price point we're on, it's pretty much expected the entire main level is wood floor.
Yeah.
A lot of times one of my questions that I'll ask clients when I'm building their home or designing it for them is, do you wear house shoes? Do you wear slippers? And the reason I ask is sometimes people have a connotation that, hey, I'm on a hard surface like wood floor, my feet will get tired.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people, if they're wearing, house shoes or slippers, that kind of is a mitigating factor. Allergies is a big one. Having wood. I mean, if you've ever seen a microscope of like a carpet, you'll never do carpet again.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's pretty nasty at what carpet holds in.
Correct.
It's not great, and you have to clean wood floors too. But
Yeah.
it's a surface that's much easier to clean.
Correct.
How often do you get into conversations like that with your clients, just explaining to them the benefits of a wood floor over other surfaces?
Yeah. So interesting you say that, because it feels like in the last 5 years, it's a lot of hard surfaces are taking over the soft. I think allergies drive that, number one.
Mm-hmm.
People with allergies, and then they realize that carpets aren't that green.
Yeah.
Really, they're made of oils, and then they hold in so much extra. Now, most of the issues with any flooring naturally is, for any flooring is kids and pets. Right? Shoes, for one, could be.
What's harder on a wood floor? Kids are
well,
pets.
It depends which one.
Okay, you've got a golden
There's
lab,
reasons.
a golden lab, or like a 5-year-old.
If you let the golden lab outside to do its thing,
Yeah.
then the 5-year-old can be harder on it.
Okay.
But a lot of clients, for some reason, a lot of people, they feel like their pets do not, pee or anything throughout the house. And until you roll up that carpet, we can walk and usually smell it right away. Right? So something that's interesting to us, and there's times where, like, even as far as just the particles and how nasty a carpet really is, you don't really know for sure until you roll it up and look at the bottom side.
Yep.
Then it tells a story everywhere.
Yep.
We know where plants have been sitting. We know where pets have been going in the corner. We know where kids have been doing, what they've been losing.
Yep.
And usually it's hard for us to explain that until we do.
Right.
We roll up the carpet in. So there's been a lot of instances where, and then you think of all the unseen, the allergies that are existing in
Yes.
there. So I think that's probably been driving the trend toward hard surface.
I think for sure the younger clientele is more keen on the air quality, and I think
true.
I think I often will bring it up as well, just because I like the wood floor, and I also I'm trying to educate the client. I mean, a big part of my job is trying to not necessarily push a product, because that's not really what it's about. It's more of just like educating them and letting them make a decision on what's important to them.
Yeah.
And so if we talk about, let's say, filtering their air, no different than filtered water, and the more information I have and use, even like switching to water-based product, right? For a long time, most of the finishings that it seemed like we did on wood floors was oil. Can you explain a little bit to those listening that wouldn't know as much? Explain the differences in oil-based finishing and water-based finishing on a wood floor, and the pros and cons to each.
Yeah, that's good. It feels like a lot of I like to tell clients too, as well as far as cleaning purposes, It's much easier to clean a floor. It's something's visible. It's always set on top. You can see it, there, hence you go clean it. Carpet doesn't feel like you clean it as much, right? So that being said, it feels like the trend is definitely towards a water-based finish, or anything that has less VOCs than the previous, decade of finish. Waxes used to be fairly prevalent, and then it switched over to a lot of alcohol-based finishes.
So walk me through that wax. I guess we haven't done a lot of wax.
So you'll see in a lot of for surely commercial spaces, then old, maybe like 100-year old houses, they'll have an oil finish or some sort of finish, but then they'll have a wax on top, so it's easy to maintain, and you can just run a little machine or a little like a rag over it to clean it up.
Interesting.
It picks up a lot of particles, but it doesn't allow that finish to be wrecked as fast. And then wax and water, they don't mix, so it'll sit on top rather than penetrating the floor.
Interesting.
So there's certain things there's benefits to it,
Mm-hmm.
but when you go to do a little repair on it, you have to resand most likely. Also, real quick, quick note. For those that are interested in know if they have wax, we will charge an extra like $2 a square foot if the floor has wax.
Mm-hmm.
You can spit on a penny and then put it on the floor and then pull it off in a couple 10, 15 seconds. And if it leaves a white residue, that means you have wax.
Really?
So it's kind of interesting.
Why spit? Is that like
I think it's just
somehow?
the acid reacting with the copper.
Interesting.
Or something in those particles. So yeah, so it's interesting ways. So we'll do it. We can tell almost right away just by the sheens and stuff.
Yep.
But it just tells you how old your floor is for one.
Yep.
Wax for the most part was non-existent. I mean, we still use it here and there just for clients that are, prevalent to it. But it feels like it disappeared mainly maybe 60s, 70s for the most part, and then oil started picking up. And then now in the last maybe 10 years, it feels like we're buying very few, gallons of oil and then switching over to water bases.
And the water, if I understand it, is there a difference in hardness between oil and water, or is the hardness the same? As far as like, if go to the example, let's say you have a 50-pound lab and he's got claws, is he going to leave? Let's say the white oak is the same under both. Is he going to scratch more on water based or oil based, or it's the same?
Yeah, so it's interesting because we have the same conversation with a lot of like pre-finish products because they have usually like 8 to 9 coats of aluminum oxide, or like a ceramic base. There's a point where you get too hard as far as something that's too sharp, like a claw, right? So when they say it's a 30-year warranty on the finish, they're not talking something that's sharp, but now foot traffic, call it, it's not so sharp.
Yeah.
The aluminum oxides are really good, right? They'll last 50 years if you take care of them. That's true for an Excite finish floor as well. It's just not as hard. Equivalent, if you were to take 3 coats of oil-based finish, and then you wanted to get the same level, call it, let's just say on a floor. To get to that same level, you need 4 coats of water-based finish, right? So people tend to think that oil is definitely thicker and better. Well, oil is not nearly as hard as a water base. Water base has a lot more solids in it. You can mix in a catalyst and even make it more harder, and a lot of people use it for commercial uses as well. So there's a lot of benefits. Oil has a lot higher VOC content. Takes a long time to dry, smells, permeates the whole house. Water-based, they're quicker.
Doesn't oil willing to amber more over time versus water? Doesn't water kind of lock in the color? I know that tends to be, the VOC is just something that people are primed with paint, no pun intended. But it does seem like clients, when I bring up the fact that, hey, the color is going to stay more locked and it won't amber over with the sunlight with water versus oil, that seems to be a pretty, nail in the coffin, if you will, commitment to water. Is that something that comes up quite a bit?
Yep, that's true, because oil, it has properties in it that kind of attract the sun, which would be your ambering. And within months it can start to turn color, and that's often tough for us to explain that to clients, until they see it. Now, past clients, they've seen it and they deal with it and they're trying to find ways to mitigate that. Oil or water-based does have a lot of white in it that helps block the sun. Okay. And then so there's different ways like that you can use that for trying to slow that ambering process.
Walk us through, and we'll probably dice this podcast up into the first part will be the technical side of the wood. I have another follow-up question, then maybe the second half will be more of the business side of it, since I think people listening running a business, one thing I've always enjoyed about business is about 60-70% of whatever business you're in is the same, right? Whether you're making microphones or shoelaces or wood floors or homes,
Oh, yeah.
how you run a business, hire, fire, encourage people is going to be the same. And then it's your speciality that's different. So right now we're talking about, of course, the speciality of wood floor. Walk those through that aren't familiar with a wood floor install. Why don't we go back and forth between both my point of view and your point of view of just all that's in wood floor. So obviously, I'm building a house. I get to the framing stage. I've got sheetrock is in, and we've selected, in this case, let's call it 5-inch white oak, which is extremely popular in our market. So I'll obviously have you price it out. I'll get a sample approved from the client. Walk us through the importance of the wood acclimating. Let's talk a little bit about the moisture and just some of the complications that go into a proper wood floor install, so that you have generations or decades after the fact, so that it's a successful install.
Yeah. So really, at the end of the day, like, moisture is by far our biggest problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you want to focus on just the problematic standpoint. So when we meet up, we talk about it, we get our colors, the colors, there's a whole slew of colors we can pick from, but eventually we narrow down to our 1 or 2 or 3 options, right?
Yep.
Certain woods are a little bit more durable. Certain woods are a little bit more stable. Stable meaning they move left to right, or they expand and contract. That's usually our biggest, maybe sore spot, or more, maybe the largest issue that can become, prevalent in a floor, and you can start to see the movement. Wood is a natural product.
And that would be based on moisture, right? So like,
Correct.
It's a porous material, and if there's more moisture in the air, the wood will swell.
Yeah.
And if there's less moisture in the air, it'll shrink.
Correct.
Right?
Yep, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's certain markets, like the Midwest, that there's humid seasons, typically through the summer months, and then dry seasons through the winter. So it creates a lot of challenges as far as movement. There is always times where there's like, okay, hey, we can handle so much moisture, and then it's going to start to move. There is a range, we say like 35 to 50% relative humidity, meaning how much humidity is in a certain section of air, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that can be controlled through different things that builders bring up, and different air exchangers and stuff like that.
I think people don't realize how hard that is. It's become more and more something that I talk to clients early on in the process, and we'll put an allowance in there.
Yeah.
It used to be, for a long time, was winter heat. Everyone got that. Hey, it's really cold. We don't have a furnace in. Our windows are in. We need, it's January. It's -20 for those 2 weeks every year in January. That's really fun. And, we need to have temporary heat in your house so that, footings don't heave. People get that. People don't understand, especially if they're not from our climate, is that come July and August, your humidity outside is 90%. If you don't have your AC hooked up, which really is a dehumidifier, we actually rent large scale dehumidifiers and fans, right?
That's
and
right.
you guys will come out and you'll put a moisture meter on the subfloor. Mm-hmm. And what range does the subfloor have to be at again?
Yeah, ideally it's below 12. Technically, we like to see it below 10, but we ran in the 12 range,
So the subfloor has to be 12 or 10 before you'll put it. And if not, you'll have to wait, and you'll call the builder, and you'll say, hey, Mark, your subfloor is too humid. You need more dehumidification, or whatever. We have to wait. Correct?
Yep, correct. Yeah.
And if it's too high, why don't we go through this, kind of the pros and cons of this? Let's say you were to bypass that warning and put it in at, let's say, 20% subfloor. Yeah. What would be the long-term effect of doing something?
Okay, so this will bring a part of probably the most major issues, and a lot of inspectors will look into this and look at history of like furnaces to see like where it was installed and what percent humidity and stuff like that. So here's the deal. When you do something that's too high, or anything, let's just say above 12%, especially in these wider planks, say the standard is 5 inches wide, and that seems to be the trend even just throughout the Midwest. A lot of clients like to get wider and wider, so it creates a bigger and bigger, or a larger and larger problem, potentially. If you install it too high, you will start to see some movement. Usually it's within a couple months. It takes a little bit of time. The flooring starts to move. All the end grains start to expand, and unfortunately either they'll push up against each other and the floors will start to buckle, meaning they'll come together, and right at the seams they'll start to lift.
Like a little ridge.
Just a little ridge.
Yep.
Yeah, and so you'll even see it in a lot of like photos. You'll see buckled floors, and not even like super bad, because especially like a white oak, it can move, and it's fairly stable. It allows itself to move like that, and then it will shrink back down, depending on how bad it gets out of hand.
Mm-hmm.
That can create a problem, though, if it moves too much. and comes up too high, it'll either lift that board right off the ground or it'll start pushing out walls.
Pushing out walls.
Oh yeah. Because if you envision a 5-inch floor and you've got, let's just say 50 cracks, call it, or spaces, and they move a 16th, that has to go somewhere. Either it's going up or it's going out. So flooring, it has a lot of power. I mean, you got to realize it's a natural product, and with moisture, water, it uses water to grow and to live.
Yep.
Right. So there's a lot of things that you can go in technicalities with that, which is pretty neat. But it forces us, especially in the Midwest, to find ways to kind of encourage us to keep within this certain range.
One thing I've never asked before, and just coming to me now, is so we obviously, personally, I like to do site finish, as you know. So you install the wood raw, usually 3/4 inch thick, I believe, and then you'll coat it 3 times, you'll sand it on site, and then we're done. I just personally I like the way that looks. But the bottom is not sealed. Is that correct? It's still raw?
Correct.
Is there a problem with one side being sealed and the other side's being raw? Or are they enclosed because the top is all sealed and air can't really get underneath that floor?
Yeah, so good question, because most moisture problems come from, well, either an appliance, fridge, or, which is an obvious one, or from underneath. Typically a slab that was poured, the basements are usually a little more humid, blah, blah, blah. But we lay, it's called a product called Aquabar, or some people can envision just like tar paper, right? So it's oil laden, and it will reject moisture. So no matter what, it allows the floor to breathe, but it helps with that moisture. Okay. And now if you were to get if you had a puddle of water per se on a floor, like that finish can handle it for so long, and then at some point it's going to start to seep into the floor. So that's always a bigger, I guess opens up a can of worms as far as issues. But as far as the question of whether moisture is kind of held back, I mean, that paper will use to hold back most of that moisture.
Sure, on the bottom side. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So going back kind of the order of this, so we have you guys come out, you test the floor. Okay, it's 10%. We're good to go. So how long ideally would let's say you have 3,000 square feet of, it comes out from the manufacturer. It's laid on the floor. You guys want it to acclimate to the house. Walk us a little bit through, why do we want the wood to acclimate in the house? What's the pros and cons of that?
So really, we like to see our two things we look at, or target things that we look at is the relative humidity in the house. Just see where we're at for stability on that. And then the moisture in the subfloor, and then the moisture in the hardwood. Mm-hmm. Right, so the biggest thing you need is within 3 to 4 points, percentage points. Usually the hardwood comes out between 5 and 6 and 7%. That's why we say we like to keep it below 10. Mm-hmm. Right, so now we're within 3 to 4 percentage points. If you were to creep up into 12s, sometimes it can be not a big deal. It's just, okay, now is the builder aware of it? Are they making steps to amend it?
Is that just because you have a big difference, and so that moisture, I assume, would go from more moisture to less moisture in the product?
Correct, because now, exactly, because if the subfloor, let's just say, is 20, and now we have flooring that always comes out at 5 to 6%. You can just imagine where that moisture is going in the subfloor. It's
going right into the dry fibers of the...
Correct, yeah, and even if you lay down that paper, it's just, eventually it's going to permeate through that, work its way up through the staples, whatever it is. Yep. So that's probably the biggest thing we'll check out. We'll come out, we'll take a look, we'll drop the wood. We like to see it acclimate for a week if we could. Technically, from a standpoint, you would have to rack the whole floor, meaning you have to lay out all the boards and then let it acclimate.
I have never seen that.
Right?
Have you? How often does that happen?
It doesn't have, like, we rack out all for the most part, most hardwood flooring experts will rack out the whole floor. And over the course of 2-3 days, as you're installing it, it's acclimating.
I see.
Right? So it's already getting that, and that's already, from a standpoint, from movement in the wood, that already by itself is or can be worth much more than just stacking a bunch of wood in the house for a couple weeks, right? And then now
because the air can go on all 4 sides roughly, or
correct,
3 sides.
Yeah. So you just rack it out, and then the air can just adjust. And all you're trying to do is get it so that moisture content in the wood is getting close to that moisture content in the environment.
Trying to equalize it.
Correct, and that's why I say when you take the 3 points of if they're already so close, right, within 2-3 percentage points. Yep. Acclimating isn't so stressful, or it isn't like, hey, this is something that we really need to do. Yep. Most time acclimating is really nice when you're going into a space that has high moisture and you know that your wood has such a low moisture content.
Yep. So we've got our wood floor down and we've racked it out. It has, we've hit all our moisture meters, and now you obviously you nail it all together, and then you'll do your sanding coat.
Yep.
And then for us anyway, we'll usually have you do your secondary coat. So we've got 2 coats on it, and then we'll have you cover it.
Yep.
Because now that floor is going to be unseen now for about 8 months or 6 months or however long it's going to be.
Yeah.
And then we'll have you come, maybe 3 weeks before, the client moves in, and you do your final buff coat.
Yep. Correct. Yeah. Usually it's a finished product, as you know, so there's a lot of things that have to happen before we come back in. And usually we'll let, painters come in, and sometimes even cleaners, and then we feel like if we can clean up, maybe call it everyone's messes in a way.
Yep.
Or just whatever. There's always things that happen, and dust that gets on the floor or whatever. And so it allows us to clean everything all up to what, to our standard, and then we'll final coat it. And typically clients should move it in either the following week or
How long will that wood floor last for?
As
when I
far
say
as-
last, before they need to do a sand and recoat.
Okay, so typically, pets and kids are the number one driver of resands. I mean, if you really want to get really into it. But they do say 3 to 5 years for a buff and coat, meaning you just lightly buff or scratch the finish and then coat it again. And then 8 to 10 years for a resand. Yep, which is mean like a full strip off all the finish, the stain, and redo it again.
Okay.
Yep. Have we seen floors go 25 years? Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I have to imagine a lot of that is personal taste, and obviously, if you're a family, like, I have 3 little kids, right?
Oh, yeah.
I see all the scrapes and whatever I can probably even remember, like, hey, that was from, the Tonka trunk.
Oh, yeah.
Or that was from Christmas of, 2019. And so you're like, it's just character. And then you decide, usually I would imagine a lot of people probably do a sand and recoat right before they sell the house.
Typically,
and they don't even, I've always said that about remodels, that, you should remodel the house and you're enjoying it. But there, you hear about stories where people remodel their house just to sell it. And like, well, you missed out on, the enjoyment of that remodel. You might as well have enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah. Going with that actually is kind of interesting because people like to say, like, hardwood floor is like a century-old product in a way, right? And so everyone's kind of wondering, like, well, what does that mean? So you might typically live in a house for 5, 10, 15 years, and then, like you say, you resand it, or the new client comes in, or the new person comes in, and they want to change up the color, so they resand it. So they say that you can use these resand a floor like 1 time for every millimeter. Right, so like if in 3/4 there's like 7 millimeters or close to that, let's just say. So technically you can almost sand it 7 times.
No.
Does it ever happen? We have gone through once or twice, but it's really rare.
Yeah.
It might be a floor that had a 100-year-old house that all of a sudden resanding, and then you go through it. But yeah, so that's nice for people to know that. So
you had mentioned about moisture content, and for those listening, so down in the basement, like our most recent home, I like wood floor, and so if I can, again, going back to the air quality, even if we can get wood floor in the basement. Now we have a concrete slab, and all the homes that we build, we're gonna have in-floor hydronic heat, so you can have in-floor heat there.
Yeah.
We're, because I'm taking my cues from you, but I'm not really comfortable putting solid wood. When I say solid, well, you know what I'm saying, but I'm not putting solid wood all the way down. I want engineered on the bottom, and I want real wood that I sand and site finish. I think one thing that people often get misrepresented when they come through is they'll say, oh, is that engineered floor or real wood? Well, it's both in that case, right? Because it's real wood on the top because you're sanding, it's a site finish. It's solid down to, because you could sand it
like
the 7
plywood.
times. But then the bottom, walk through, why do we need the bottom to be engineered? What is the benefits of engineered wood in a basement setting?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So in a 3/4 solid, as you say, right, that's just solid wood all the way down. And you can sand all the way down where the tongue and groove system is set up, right? So in an engineered product, a lot of times you'll get like a range of 3 to like 5 to 6 millimeter of real hardwood on top. And that's just a sheet of hardwood, right? And if you want to envision it, maybe 3/16 inch thick. And that allows us to sand and finish and do that process and maybe sand a floor 4 to 5 times, right? So the substrate or underneath is typically a Baltic birch. A lot of plywoods are made up of kind of similar properties, but it allows that floor and that moisture to either be picked up within that and not move so much. It's just super stable. It can pick up moisture and shed it better than a lot of materials. So yeah, a lot of kind of the issue maybe 10 years ago even, as you say, people would say, well, hey, no, we don't want no engineered. That's fake, right? And that was the idea. It sure was. At that time, you'd only get like a 0.5 millimeter and you could not sand it, right? Well, now we know and value the properties of an engineered product, and we like that. It's more stable. Price points have come down, so it almost matches a 3/4 solid product. And then you can sand it 4, 5, 6 times, which most people know that they'll never do it that many times anyways.
Right. So you have the benefit of both. You have
Yeah,
the
yeah.
stability and you
Yeah.
have the availability to sand it and recoat it.
Yep, correct. Yep.
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 Well, let's switch a little bit to the business side of things because you have a 30-person company, which is pretty amazing. So earlier on in the podcast, you were saying that basically once a year you were adding, kind of an employee. Walk us through. So you're at 30 people now. Do you guys work with consultants? Like, how do you do personality tests? How do you get a company? I mean, it's pretty amazing. You're 4 times, 5 times bigger than my little company, and it's just a lot of people to manage.
Yeah.
How do you end up managing a company of 30 people?
Yeah. Interesting enough, we had we were approached by a guy that just had mentioned, hey, would you guys be interested in write some sort of consulting or whatever, and he was referred by someone else, and so I called him up and said, absolutely, why not? Of course you get a lot of those phone calls. I mean, as anybody would. I mean, now it's like every phone call these days, but at the end of the day, it was well worth the trip and the journey that we went on. A lot of times, you feel like you're spending a lot of money for what, right? Like, and this doesn't help lay a floor, right? If you think about it. So we within our company, we have a lot of customer interactions, right? So as an owner, I feel like I want to be in front of every customer. Well, that's impossible.
Right.
It really is. There's just no way. Our guys are always constantly in front of people. Matter of fact, they're in front of them more than I will ever be.
Right. So they they represent your company.
They do.
They are your company.
They are our company. Absolutely. Yeah. So we've understood that in order to better our company and to build it, we've got to focus on them first, primarily. So we've set up some customer relationship, training sessions and whatnot. We also, we kind of embraced this whole DISC assessment, kind of like a personality kind of assessment, and helps people understand how they are and how they interact with people in the workforce, direct clients, stuff like that. The whole goal is mainly just to build our people and obviously to help them grow within themselves, and then also just to be able to better interact with the clients. Right? Ultimately, we felt like if they were to quit tomorrow and they were able to be a part of this process and be a part of this culture that we've driven in a way, we've just done something. Maybe it's a service to them.
Yeah.
Rather than worrying so much about, hey, this is Alpine, Alpine.
Right.
So I think as long as they've understood that, then primarily they know we're concerned about them, and then they give back in their own ways that they can. So we were approached probably 6-7 years ago. We took some DISC assessments. It kind of goes through like where you are in a 4 different quadrants, and as some people might understand what it is, and quick searches can kind of give you an idea. And then we had consultants come in and explain their versions of this DISC assessment. We actually just last Friday, a week ago Friday, we did another. A consultant out of Duluth came down and they did a whole nother kind of variation of it. So then our guys were able to be subjected to another interesting side of it, and then it kind of gives you like your own personality, like your type, and then also gives you like a workplace type, what your workplace kind of forces you to do and how you help fix that and work with it and understand it.
How do you implement that? So I get I love personality tests. I love, you kind of always know what you are, and it's always kind of fun and fascinating. But after you read that and you're like, oh, it's a little bit like, I'm not into reading horoscopes or anything, but it's kind of like you pick and choose the things you like, and you're like, yeah, that's great. And then what do you do with that? Once you have that information, how do you implement it into your company? I mean, are you moving people around?
Oh, yeah, big time.
Before I have it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we met with the guy, and he was super interesting. He came in, he started off his presentation. He said, I know who your bookkeeper is. I know who your estimator is. I know who the 2 owners are. He knew there's 2 owners. I know who your salesman is, and I also know who your the guy I'd like to kick his rear end. Yeah. Okay, so of course everyone's just like, whoa.
He got your attention.
He got our attention. Our bookkeeper came in, said hi, sat down right by him, and took out our pen and booklet and started writing notes. Instantly, he knew what that was. I came in about 15 minutes early, shook his hand. Adam came in, we shook his hand. Our salesman came in, shook his hand. The only 3 people to shake his hand. Right?
Interesting.
And then our estimator came in, and he literally, it looked like he almost crawled to the back. He had ducked down behind everybody and just sat there. Right? And then the guy that came in, that he was like, oh, I'd like to kick his, you know what,
Yeah.
you know. And the minute he said that, that guy stood up. Not stood up, but he like stiffened, and he looked over at him. He's like, yeah, that's right, you.
Oh, wow.
And we all burst out laughing.
Because you guys all knew.
Well, we didn't know.
Right.
Really at the time. Only he had a sense for a bit just based on what he knew.
Right. Oh.
So we were all just like shocked, and we
Right.
were rolling and laughing and whatever. And he just said that just based on people and colors and what they drive up in and all that. So now utilizing today, we have every new employee take these tests, and we actually, it drives a lot of our decisions on whether we hire or not.
Interesting. Out of curiosity, that person that you wanted to kick his butt, did you fire him, or is he still with the company?
No. So interesting enough. So those type of people can handle a ton of stress.
Yep.
A ton. So this instructor was a D personality himself.
Mm-hmm.
And this person, Vaughn, he's part owner of our union company that we have as well. But they can handle stress like no other. Great at decision making, usually a bigger picture person.
Interesting.
They relate to these people as like eagles, right? They're always just want to just plow forward and get her done, focus on tasks. So they're actually, you do need them.
Yep.
You actually need everybody in these circles, but it usually takes like that type of person to kind of set the precedent in a way. Like, where are we going kind of thing.
Right.
And then everybody else kind of follows.
Interesting.
So
That's
yeah, it
cool.
was just really interesting. Like, but you know, now since we've done this a few different times, so let's just say that D and that estimator, they used to clash.
Yeah.
They're our two oldest employees.
Yeah.
They would clash, and I could see this, and I would like, what's wrong with you guys?
Right.
Honestly, what are you doing? And after we did this, and we kind of went through the process, I think they realized the value of each other,
Mm-hmm.
and they actually grew to respect each other.
Do you think this DISC assessment, I can see why my initial bias is like, I see how it would be very beneficial to a larger company.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's equally beneficial to a smaller company? You know, I have 5 employees.
Oh, absolutely.
You think it's...
Oh, we tested our wives. We tested everybody.
You tested your wives?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But just to be clear, your wives work within the company.
No, they don't.
Oh, you
Oh, yeah, no.
So
I
I
would
would
pay for it. Yeah.
So this is fascinating. Okay,
yeah.
so I would test my wife. What would be the value of that?
So if you think about it, there's 4 things. Kind of either you're task oriented or you're people oriented,
Mm-hmm.
right? One or the other.
Can you be both or no?
You can be both. You'll have versions of both, but you're kind of one or the other,
Okay.
right? So tasks, you want to get stuff done, you focus on the process, blah, blah, blah. And then people, you just need people to survive.
Yep.
Or you need people to work with, you want to visit with all the time.
Yep.
So there's a lot of things that I would be like, even with my own wife. So her and I are both like, well, they say either you're kind of like an eagle.
Mm-hmm.
This is a different version of it too, but like an eagle, or you're like a parrot, or you're like a dove, or you're like an owl.
Yep.
Owls like processes, engineers, a lot of architects, they like to work by themselves. They just, our estimators kind of like that, just real concise, perfect, get things. They're part of like a task.
They ask a lot of who questions.
There you go. Never thought of that one. Oh yeah, there you go.
I'm definitely not a.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, but see, like this will tell you kind of where you're at, and the best part is it allows you to, like just manage your relationship amongst your employees, and then also with people that you work with every day and clients, and then more importantly, your wife.
Interesting enough. I mean, obviously, our sales cycle is a lot longer than yours, right? And you interact sometimes with the clients, usually the staining meeting or something like that on site. But, let's say it's a day at most where, I'll build the clients, maybe it's a year and a half. Would there be a benefit for me to actually test my clients?
You could, if they would let you.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll give you like a 20-page report. It'll give you even like, now we got like a 6-page one kind of highlighting what these values are like and what they treasure and whatever. It would definitely help you and your relationship or your ways to manage them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? For them to know how you are, yeah, for sure. But I don't know if they're going to spend the time like or commitment that you would.
Right.
Right? So for you, like I can usually see someone to some degree and be like, okay, we're going to hire this person. How are they treating people? Are they focused on what they're doing? Are they more focused with people? Do they like doing what their thing?
Yep.
Right? There's things like driving up in a red truck is more like a parrot personality. They like people. They like sales. They like look at me kind of personalities. Yep. Right? Which is fine.
Yep.
You need that. A person that dresses in like a lot of black is usually like your C's or whatever. They just don't want to be seen. They just want to be kind of blend in the blackness, and they're just doing their thing. You need those.
Mm-hmm.
You need estimators. You need people that deal with all the tasks and all the
bookkeeping
items, bookkeeping. All that is perfect.
Yeah.
Right. And then you need the D's, like I mentioned, the Eagles that kind of provide the vision and kind of the direction of the company. And then the Doves, they're like the hardest working. They're not good at like offending people. They're most loved usually.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to look at like the DIs, SC, there's a lot of like 10% is like a D of a general population. 25% is like an I. I just think of, like a lot of business owners are Ds. They have to be.
Right. What are you?
I'm an ID.
Okay.
So I need people, but then I use like my D. I like to work hard and focus on stuff. I need that as like a battery.
Yeah.
I need that to recharge.
Yep.
Right. But I ultimately like people.
Yep.
Right. And I like to get out and I like to forge relationships and be friendly and have fun. A lot of times they say the I's are just all about fun.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Make things inspiring and happiness, But then there's about a 35% of the population is like like the white, call it a dove, right? Like a white dove. They don't offend people and stuff like that. So that'd be your S's, and then your C's, that's like another like 25%.
Interesting. Going back to, because I didn't quite get the answer to it, what was the benefit of testing your family members that were not part of the company? So testing your wife, for instance, how does that help? Just helps you understand. So happy wife, happy life.
Kind of. It does, because you think about it. If you are, let's say an I, right? You need a lot of people. You need a lot of action. You like chaos, blah blah blah. And your wife is like a C. Not saying that that's very bad, but typically they conflict. Yep. Right? Your wife's like, well, why are you always out there shoving your neck out there, being me kind of thing?
Right.
And I would rather we just blend in the background. Not saying that that's how, that is, and they can coexist. They do all the time. It's just you need if you got two people that are or people that are married that are more people oriented, well, now there's a little bit more less friction. Yep. Right? If you think about it, there's less to figure out. Like, you like people, I like people, let's go places, So that's where it's helped us understand for one, us better, our closest significant other, and then our employees or our people.
I can see that, because ultimately, when you are suffering at home, whether you're just stressed at home for whatever reason, and as you're raising kids, or your dad, and going through the seasons of life with your children, or whatever, whatever it may be, health, sickness, any of those things. It sounds like this tool just gives you a very meaningful tool to engage with people, and you're using it in a business setting, which is very helpful, but really it can be used to any person, any relationship.
Really, any relationship. I actually wish we'd have done this. I wish I would, like I did a whole bunch through college and whatnot, and they're all beneficial, but I wish I would have been like almost forced to do it and actually do something with it.
Yeah.
I mean, now when we go to pick up a new employee, we're like, hey, we're interested in this person.
Yeah.
I mean, I've come in the shop at like 10:30 at night, and there's 4 guys looking at our, because we post all the results wherever it's at. And they're like, oh, he's going to be an ID, or he's going to be this, or whatever. And then they're already like trying to contemplate where this person is going to fall.
Right.
Right. And then also too, that you hire based on that. You need a bookkeeper. You're not going to go pick up an eye for bookkeeper.
Right.
It don't work.
Yep.
It just doesn't work. That's not a good fit for them.
Right.
Right. And vice versa.
Interesting.
So there's a lot of different things that we've learned from that. And it's just allowed us to, for our people to understand each other. And then clients, like there's clients that are unhappy, there's clients that are happy, and there's ways to help both sides.
How have you, within a company of 30 people, I mean, it's a very generic question, how do you deal with conflict management? But do you have a story or anything like that of like how, I guess you'd had one where they basically got to respect each other, 2 of your longest employees. It's a lot of personalities. So how do you, within Alpine, how do you guys manage it? Is it little sub teams? I mean, you had mentioned before you kind of maybe even follow kind of like a military structure, like little groups or pods or squads. Can you speak to how do you manage it when there's that many people?
Well, so now, like I said, the most likable and lovable is the eye, right? Mm-hmm. It's a white dove, right? They're usually willing to do whatever they can. They don't want to ruffle any feathers, so to speak. If we have any issues, we send the doves. Mm-hmm. If you think about it, right? It's almost like a peace offering in a way.
It's a soft answer turneth away wrath.
There you go.
It's a verse
exactly.
I mean, that's a verse I often use. I've mentioned it in a previous podcast. It's probably the verse that I use the most out of the Bible in a business setting.
Yeah.
And I often, if I go into a contentious relationship, or if I know my client is upset or an employee is upset, or I've used it, even at home, and just, I wish I need to think of it more, frankly, but it's a very powerful verse for me, just to think like, going in and saying, I'm sorry, going in with softening. So often if you come in with, everyone wants to defend their own position.
Yeah,
I do it all the time. I'm very stubborn, I have a very strong personality. So, and you come in and your guns are blazing, and usually doesn't go very well.
No.
But when you walk in, I'm going to have to picture this. When you go in with like a dove, you're going in soft.
It honestly, you go in soft, and it almost defragments that hard, prideful, ignorance that we kind of, especially as men, have, right?
Yep, for sure.
So we've learned that has helped a lot. If we have clients that are challenging, we usually send the guys that can deal with that better, or that maybe would be like a dove and approach most situations like that.
Mm-hmm.
We wouldn't send the D in there.
Right.
Not a chance.
No.
If we have a job that has
That's just
a lot
fighting fire
of
with
pressure,
fire.
it is, yeah. But sometimes though, if you have a client that's like a D, he won't respect that S.
That's true.
Or that I.
That's true.
He will only respect that other D.
You're right.
We have seen that too.
Yep. You're right.
Right? So there's certain situations that and not like you always got problem clients, but like it's allowed our guys to like come into a place, they introduce themselves, blah, 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 my name's so-and-so, and then they get a gauge on how the client's going to be, and they try to help them, encourage them and speak in their way.
I like what you said, that, regardless if they've worked with Alpine, that they can go out into the world and feel like they've learned a better way to navigate life. I put some words in your mouth.
Yeah, totally. I think that's all we really care about, because
right?
Alpine won't always be here, unfortunately, but people will.
Yep.
If you think about it, we will always be here, and of course I come from big families,
Yep.
Family really first.
Yep.
Right? Because if you can grow within that, then everything else follows. Hey, we go out and we install a floor. We sand it, we finish it, we go through a process, some good, some bad.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, we feel are really good,
mm-hmm.
right? Slightly biased, but at the end of the day, that is a process, and that's a business perspective. But from a family perspective, you have to grow people, and at the end of the day, that's long.
I mean, you touched on something that I want to talk about family. It's important to me, and we talked about this, before we even came on the podcast, of just like, are you attracted to other businesses that are also very family orientated, or does it just happen to be that the businesses that you relate to are family orientated? I don't know. I don't know if it's important to know the difference.
Yeah.
But it is. I can tell you that as someone who's worked with you for a long time, and you're one of our inner subcontractors, inner partners that we work with and partner with. I mean, I've called you for parenting advice. You gave me some cool ideas, like how do you set up, as my kids get older, you have a lot more kids and they're older than I am. So it's like I love to pick the brains, because I do feel that being a dad, and being a mom for that matter too, is a lot like running a business.
Totally.
Because do you feel like it's analogous to, like, not that I view the people that work for me like they're my kids, but like you want to be encouraging. Yeah. Sometimes you do have to set boundaries and guidelines.
Yeah.
I often think of things in a familiar structure. Do you think a business, I guess, where do you think the parallels start and stop in owning a business and essentially having kind of a family effect, if you will?
Yeah. So a few of our employees have large families as well, and we have noticed that a lot of conflict resolution has been taking place their whole lives.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about it, right?
Yeah.
They've been dealing with the brother they can't get along with and the sister that they love, but yet they fight. There's always resolutions, and there's conflict all the time.
So they've had on-the-job training since they were born.
Since they're born, right? So if you think about it, that's pretty powerful.
That's a very interesting, that's true.
Right? So already we're not, and of course I'm not saying they're all like that, but like that's kind of like, well, we understand and we're exposed to it, and that's how we feel like it'll always be there.
Yeah.
But now if you can just better understand it, and a lot of outbursts or problems or whatever you want to say,
mm-hmm.
they're not necessarily they're not like necessary in a way. It's just because we don't understand each other.
Right.
Or because
Which goes back to your DISC assessment. If I can understand the other person, it's a fundamental way to understand how to communicate.
Yeah, and you can solve so many problems. I mean, 10% of the problems are real problems, and then obviously as you solve and fix problems, you grow with it anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So it's okay to have problems. Now it's just to understand that and respect that we're trying to move forward on something.
So you guys have large families. You had mentioned, so there's walk me through this again. There's 4 brothers that have married 4 sisters of another family.
Well,
do I have that right?
It's not brothers, not 4 brothers, but I've got so there's 4 Janklas.
Okay.
married to 4 Josephsons,
Okay.
right? So there's like my brother Adam's married to
So we have a lot of
Josephson.
cousins in this scenario.
There,
There's a-
yeah, correct.
yep.
Mutual, yep, correct.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah,
Well-
so that's an interesting note. And of course we've paid attention to it.
Yeah.
And like as I mentioned earlier, a lot of like the Dynamoms that said something about like along them lines. And of course it's definitely unique.
Yeah.
It just tells you that there's large families where we're at.
Yeah. Well, strong family values. I mean, loyalty. I mean, one of the questions that I was going to ask you with this is, of the people that work for you, how many are related? And I had brought someone on recently on a podcast that they were 3rd generation.
Okay.
And they had talked about how in order to work within the company, the family dynamic for this particular company, they had to work for 5 years outside of the company or gain a major promotion before they could work for the company. And that was the way that company decided, and they have several hundred employees. That was their way of making sure that the family wasn't complacent and that was bringing value to the family company. And you guys taught, I thought it was really, it was really insightful.
Yeah.
I was like really blown away. I'm like, that's great. Whoever thought of that was very forward thinking in terms of like, making sure that you had new ideas and like it didn't become, stagnated at the leadership level. I was just curious, as a family, you and Adam are brothers and you have a lot of family members. How have you navigated hiring family? There's got to be some dynamics that even though everyone's, you have a good network, but there's going to be issues that come up.
Yeah.
How have you decided to navigate that in the future?
It's interesting you say that because we haven't really, we're not old enough, I think, or been around it long enough. I mean, now our boys, they're starting to get old to this age.
Because what's your oldest?
My oldest is 14.
Okay.
Yeah, so even in his sake, and maybe I already recognize this from before this, but he wants to work for our company.
Mm-hmm.
And he's farming and driving tractors and doing all this stuff that I'm like, I'd rather you didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah, you can come work and help out in the shop, that kind of thing.
Yep.
I would much rather you learn all this other stuff prior.
Yep.
Whether he comes out and goes through high school and then gets a job, I don't know yet. By then he'll probably be long since in the company. And but as you said that, I have another brother that went to college. We had a bunch of brothers go to college, but they, some came out as engineers and they worked at the company and they had their own ideas, right? And now they're implementing hey, you guys should have 2 screens rather than, or have 3 screens, in office settings. And, there's a lot of things that they have helped us implement,
Mm-hmm.
And then one went through finance, and also same thing. Came back, hey, at this company we did XYZ, we did
So
this.
they brought new ideas.
Totally.
Yep.
Yeah, totally. Right. So
that has helped the company.
Totally. Yeah. So but I think that naturally happened as my own siblings, right?
Yes.
As far as next generation, that's hard to say what will happen. I mean, they're getting to the point where they're going to be close, for sure. And even for their own sakes, it's better for them to get out and experience other, fields, I suppose.
Well, I'd stay tuned. We'll bring you back in 10 years.
Okay, where are we?
Be like, hey, remember in 2022 when we had this conversation? How did you solve that problem? Mark, I didn't. I now have 10 of my, we've got 30 kids running us, and I'm happy to push a broom because they're telling me what to do.
Oh yeah. I'm sure that's where we'll be, but who knows?
Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
But as we mentioned earlier, though, I was going to mention as far as our structure, a lot of companies, if you think of the U.S. military, and I didn't join the force or anything, as a note, but I just respected, how they set up, and it's pretty cutthroat in a way. Whoa, why? How come they're doing this? How come there's only a 3-man squad? Or, whatever it is, right? So there's as we're growing, there's this shift to okay, you're at 3 employees. Okay, how is this? What kind of problems does this come up with? How do we present ourselves, and how do we work through these issues? They say as a structure, the 3 to 5 to 7 ish is okay, but 2 to 3 is really good. It's efficient. You get in, everybody knows each other. You just go to work, right? Tends to get a little bit, whatever. There's some things now there's 6 of us, and I don't know these 3, but we know these 3 really good, and it can get a little bit tight in there. But then they say that a manager can manage about 10 people, right? So in the military, there's a squad of maybe 8 or something, 7 or 8, and then maybe up to 10, right? So then in the business world, if you get to the 7 to 10, 11, it's fairly efficient. You got I don't know, CEO or a president or someone that's running all their guys, and he's a visionary, he's an integrator, he's working, he's working, whatever, right? As a partnership with my brother Adam and I, as I mentioned earlier, I usually like to think further than a month out, and he
Mhm.
usually thinks, let's just say within a month. He integrates. He does a lot of like the day-to-day operations and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So I was in 8 to 10 employees, and I was fine. I could do it no problem. But now when we get to like the 11, 12, 13, 14, it's too much,
Mhm.
right? So the military recognizes this. So they don't do any groups, call it, whether it's a squad or a, any type of like ranking system, but they jump from that 10 to 11 group all the way up to 30, to a platoon, right? So and the reason for that is anywhere in between this like 11, 12 to about 28 to 29, it's just utter chaos. It is, and we've experienced that.
Interesting.
And hey, who's gonna bookkeep this? Who's gonna manage that? Now we have a hiring process. Who's in charge of that? Well, I used to do everything, right? Because that's all we had. There was only one of us.
So it became kind of like a law of diminishing returns. There was only so much you could manage at one time, and once you exceeded the number of people you could manage, it became you had more people, but you weren't very efficient.
No, yeah, you weren't very efficient, and then you were letting things go. Like, I remember not billing a client for like $25K.
Mm-hmm.
Totally spaced out. Went back to her like 7 months later, and she fortunately was willing to pay it up. But it's like, you can't do that.
Right.
Well, you can't.
Yep.
We're at 15 guys, and I was just, every day doing your thing.
Yep.
You can only do so much within a day.
Yep.
Right. So that's where we've always like been like, hey, we're kind of at a sweet spot. 30 people. It's bookkeepers, estimators, salesmen, owners, operators, whatever. And then they say you want to jump up from there, 50s, increments of 50s.
Interesting.
So it's kind of
what's the future? Do you guys want to continue to grow and make it bigger, or are you kind of at a sweet spot, or how do you and Adam look? You mentioned you're kind of more long-term visionary. What have you thought in like the years to come? Where do you see Alpine going?
Yeah, so we've definitely thought, okay, yeah, we're just keep at 10 guys. Yeah, that's what most companies do. Either like from 3 to 10, safe, easy. And then I kind of pushed them a little bit, but I was like, we got to at least try to get to 30, And now it's allowed us to not be so involved and so like just buried in work, But we mentioned earlier that we started up a union company as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we're part of that. We've sold out some ownership to one of my brothers, and then to this D person I was mentioning earlier, who was our second longest employee. But we started that up, and then that just allows us, like, some of our guys there.
Would it be like gymnasiums, or what's the commercial mean exactly?
Yeah. So they do a lot of work for like Mortenson's and a lot of these big companies,
I see.
Ryan companies, and there's just 11 on the River Project. We're doing a ton of work on that for them, and
yep.
Stuff like that, like gyms, restaurants, condos, stuff like that. What was happening is we were missing out on a lot of big projects, as you can see.
Because you didn't have the number of people to man it up.
Well, no, mainly because it was a union project versus non-union.
Oh, I see.
Right? What we feel is a lot of our employer, like a workforce, is young. Right? At some point, they hit this 25 to 30, and they're like, all right, this was fun, blah, 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 but I'm looking for either more pay or a steadier or more consistent, work day, right?
Mm-hmm.
So our idea was that we would run a bunch of younger guys, go through, and they'd be kind of the training for maybe our union company, right? So just allow them, okay, maybe they've transitioned to something like that. Yeah, they got to get up a little earlier, higher pay, a lot, better benefit packages, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
So there's reasons that we set that up with the idea of, maybe they would want to transition to that.
Mm-hmm.
Now we were able to still be a part of their lives, still be a part of, helping them out down the road. So I'm not saying that's where they would go, but it gives them the option.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So Adam and I spent a lot of time setting that up and getting that, traction on that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it just allowed us to go into that. So it's now it's like, hey, do we stay at 30 and then build this other one and transition people into that if they want? Or do you grow it? And that's kind of a question we've struggled with, I guess, a little bit. Like, at some point you're going to run into so many headaches, you're not going to know what to do,
Right.
And we've seen companies do that. They've grown big, and then they
do you guys still
descale.
Do stuff out of state?
Oh yeah.
And what was the impetus behind that, or how did that come about? I know sometimes when the younger guys, you'd be like, hey, drive down to Florida and do 100,000 square feet of whatever, and come back. How did that come about?
So that was if you were to look at our website, you can see a lot of projects we've been on. It really came down to where there's a project in this our house furniture store in Edina.
Mm-hmm.
a guy called in and said, "Hey, would you guys be willing to do it? You have to work nights and start in like 5-6 days." And we're like, "Absolutely, let's do this."
Yep.
So whatever, we jumped on it. And that opened up the doors to maybe, I think we're close to 30 stores we've done throughout the company.
For that
through
company.
the country. For our house furniture stores.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've been.
So it's one client in multiple states.
It's one. So this is a guy that was in charge of this furniture store.
Yep.
From out of Baltimore. He's another hardwood floor subcontractor. Right. So we've done all these furniture stores. We're getting close to 30 of them. Just you name it, we've probably been there.
Yep.
And it's usually like they would only stick their stores right like Southdale Mall and Edina here.
Yep.
There's not too many areas they'd put them in.
Yep.
But then he opened the doors to like the U.S. Naval Academy and some stuff in D.C. and
cool.
all over Georgetown University, all kind of out east stuff.
And so you'll get a job. You'll load up a van of what, RV or just a van, or
we'll grab a truck with the trailer.
Yep.
Yeah, load it up with 4, 5, 6 guys depending on what we need, and then run from there.
Okay.
Run them out there, and yeah. That's been a unique experience. But yeah, as you say, a lot of younger guys they want to go.
Yep. I mean,
where are we going?
That'd be cool. If I was young and single without a family, I think that'd be and I bet the money's good. I mean,
BC, money's good, and there's times now where he will say, "I don't really care who you send as long as they have an Alpine Hardwood hat on."
Isn't that amazing?
So that's what's been so much enjoyment to see.
Right.
I don't even care. I know that you'll be there. You'll be a part of it.
Yep.
People will be there. You guys do good work. I mean, they don't worry about nothing.
It's a relationship.
It's a huge relationship. Yeah.
Well, we could talk for hours. So our time's up.
What?
Yeah, I know. It's already been 4 hours. What is where can our listeners find you guys?
So yeah, we have websites, YouTube, or we just post like a YouTube deal.
Like a YouTube channel?
Yeah, well, we're kind of like getting into creating one,
Okay.
and we just posted some we did this disc training last week ago Friday.
Oh, okay.
We didn't post that, but we posted another kind of like an interview we've done.
Okay.
Showcasing some jobs. Instagram, Facebook. I mean, they're kind of the two.
So Alpine
two
Hardwood
biggest one. Our website,
Yep.
alpinehardwoodmn.com, and that's where most of our projects are posted.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for those listening, we'll have everything in the show notes. We'll have the website and Instagram handles for Alpine Hardwoods. Thanks for coming on, Anthony, and we'll see you in the field shortly.
Thank you much.
All right.
See you, Mark.